The morning sun had barely risen over Fort Benning, Georgia, when Private First Class Emily Torres stepped onto the sprawling training grounds. The air smelled of dew and freshly churned soil, tinged faintly with the scent of gunpowder from the previous day's drills. She carried her duffel bag on one shoulder, her rifle case in the other, each step echoing in the silent stretch of asphalt. Around her, a sea of recruits shuffled along, their faces a mix of determination, fear, and exhaustion. Emily had been through basic training, yes, but advanced marksmanship was a whole different battlefield. As she approached the training compound, Emily felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her. The men in her platoon sized her up instantly. She could feel the skepticism radiating from them like heat waves. One whispered, "Great." Another, "Girl who thinks she can handle this," just loud enough for her to hear. Emily's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She had learned long ago that attention could be weaponized. Silence was her shield. At the center of the range, a tall, imposing figure stepped out from the shade of the barracks. Sergeant Donovan. His reputation preceded him, a battle-hardened veteran, notorious for his gruff demeanor and merciless training style. His eyes scanned the new recruits, lingering on Emily for an uncomfortably long moment. There was a smirk on his lips, as if he already knew exactly how this would play out. "You, Torres?" he barked, his voice slicing through the morning air. Emily stepped forward, shoulders squared, heart thumping in her chest. "Yes, Sergeant." He gave a small, almost dismissive nod, then turned his gaze to the rest of the recruits. "We've got a full day of marksmanship assessments. And let me be clear, anyone who can't keep up, you'll be out before lunch. No excuses." His eyes flicked back to Emily. "Especially you." The words hit like a cold slap, and for a brief second, doubt tried to creep in. She could feel the stares of the other recruits, a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled pity. Emily's father had warned her that this day might come. Corporal Daniel Torres, her father and former sniper instructor, had been a figure larger than life in her childhood. His lessons on patience, focus, and discipline had been the backbone of every accomplishment she had achieved, and every trial she would now face. Losing him had been devastating, but he had left her a gift, a mindset that refused to break under pressure. Emily exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from her body. She lifted her rifle case with practiced ease, and as she slung it over her shoulder, she felt the familiar weight anchor her resolve. This was her proving ground, not a playground. Donovan might see her as a weak recruit, a girl who didn't belong, but she had trained for years, honing every skill in secret. Every drill, every late-night practice session, every memory of her father, whispering slow is smooth, smooth is fast, would converge here today. The sergeant's whistle cut sharply through the air. Emily joined the line, her boots crisp against the gravel. Donovan walked down the line, scrutinizing every recruit. When he reached Emily, he stopped abruptly. He leaned closer, his shadow falling over her. "You think you can do this?" His voice was low, almost a challenge. "Do you even know what it takes?" Emily looked him in the eye, her own gaze steady, unwavering. "Yes, Sergeant," she replied, her voice calm but firm. She didn't smile. She didn't waver. That one sentence seemed to surprise him. A brief flicker of something almost like respect crossed his features before he continued down the line. Training began with basic drills, stance, grip, and posture. The sun climbed higher, and sweat quickly dampened Emily's shirt. Each movement was scrutinized, each misstep corrected with Donovan's sharp commands. Her fellow recruits struggled, some muttering complaints under their breath, while others kept quiet, too focused or too intimidated to speak. Emily, however, felt the fire inside her intensify. Every correction was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown, and she was determined to pick it up and run it. By midday, the range had become a cacophony of gunfire, shouted commands, and the metallic clang of shells hitting the ground. Emily's hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but she could sense Donovan's gaze, always there, always critical. Her first shots weren't perfect. A couple of rounds strayed wide, and she felt the familiar sting of frustration. But she remembered her father's voice, reminding her that failure was not an end, but a step toward mastery. Between drills, Emily watched her fellow recruits falter under pressure. Some gave up entirely, slumping in defeat, while others complained bitterly about the harsh conditions. She didn't judge them. Their struggles were their own. But every stumble reminded her of the gap she had to close, the expectations she had to exceed. She wasn't here to blend in. She was here to stand out. The first day ended with a strict debrief. Donovan didn't offer praise. It was not his style, but he did leave a mark. "You'll either earn respect here, or you'll leave," he said. Scanning the group, his eyes lingering again on Emily. "Torres, I'll be watching you." Emily packed her equipment with quiet precision, the sweat and grime of the day still on her skin. She didn't feel defeated. She felt determined. That night, in the dim light of the barracks, she lay awake on the narrow cot, visualizing every shot, every movement she had made. She could hear Donovan's voice, still sharp and skeptical, but she imagined herself performing flawlessly. She imagined proving him wrong. Outside, the wind rustled the trees along the perimeter, carrying with it the promise of the next day, a day where she would begin transforming skepticism into respect. Emily closed her eyes, whispering softly, almost as if to herself, "Tomorrow, I earn it." And for the first time in a long while, she believed it. By the end of the night, Emily Torres wasn't just a recruit arriving at Fort Benning. She was a force quietly gathering strength, ready to face whatever the sergeant, the platoon, or the trials ahead might throw at her. Tomorrow would be harder. Tomorrow would test her. But Emily knew one thing. She had already survived the first battle, the battle to believe in herself. And that was worth everything. The next morning, the sun had barely pierced the horizon, but the range was already alive with the metallic clatter of rifles and the low hum of early drills. Emily Torres stood among the recruits, her rifle slung across her shoulder. Her body ached from the previous day's training, but her mind was sharp, honed by late nights of practice and relentless determination. Today, she would face her first live fire drills, and deep down, she knew the sergeant was waiting for a misstep. As the recruits lined up, Sergeant Donovan's boots crunched against the gravel. His presence was magnetic, commanding, and terrifying all at once. He stopped in front of Emily and leaned slightly closer, his shadow casting a long line across her face. "You ready to shoot straight, Torres?" he asked, voice dripping with skepticism. Emily nodded silently. Words weren't needed. Actions would speak for her. The drill began. Emily's first shot rang out, then a second, and then a third veered off the mark. Her heart sank as the bullets splattered across the target's periphery. The whispers started immediately. Some recruits smirked. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Donovan's sharp voice cut through the murmurs. "Focus, Torres. What are you doing?" The sting of public correction was sharp. Her ears burned. Her face flushed, but Emily refused to let embarrassment dominate her. She reset her stance, adjusting her grip and breathing. Her father's lessons replayed in her mind. Feet firm, eyes steady, slow as smooth. Sweat trickled down her temple as she recalibrated. She exhaled slowly, letting each breath center her. Then she fired again. The rounds landed closer to the center. A small spark of hope flared within her. She could do this. She would do this. Donovan walked past, examining the other recruits, his gaze returning briefly to her. He didn't offer praise, but his silence was a form of acknowledgement in itself. The rest of the platoon, however, noticed. A few started nudging each other, whispering, "She might actually make it." Emily ignored them. Their doubt, their curiosity, their subtle judgments were irrelevant. Only the target mattered, only the bullet, only her control over the moment. Hours passed. Emily's arms burned, her back ached, and her fingers felt stiff from gripping the cold steel of the rifle. Her shots began to align, grouping tighter with each attempt. But just as she started to feel confident, Donovan called her out. "This isn't enough, Torres. You're holding back. You want to be a soldier, or do you want to be a spectator?" His voice echoed, sharp and biting. The other recruits flinched. Some froze under the intensity. Emily's pulse raced. This was more than a drill. It was a test of her mental endurance. For a moment, doubt tried to creep in. She could feel the embarrassment, the fatigue, the fear of failing in front of Donovan and her peers. But she remembered something her father had always said during her childhood training sessions. Pressure is a privilege. It's when you feel fear that you know you're alive. Channel it, don't fight it. Emily exhaled, letting the fear transform into focus. She gripped her rifle tighter, adjusting her stance and breath. With deliberate precision, she fired again. The shots landed dead center. Donovan's eyes narrowed. For the first time, he didn't speak immediately. The other recruits glanced at each other, silent murmurs of astonishment passing between them. Emily didn't allow herself to smile. The battle wasn't over. She had proven competence, not mastery. By midday, the heat of the Georgia sun had turned the range into a furnace. Sweat soaked her uniform, dripping into her eyes and stinging her skin. Each shot required more focus, more control. Donovan's sharp commands continued, each one testing her patience and endurance. Get your sights right. Elbows steady. Breathing controlled. Every word was a knife, cutting through distractions, leaving only the rifle, the target, and Emily's resolve. During a brief break, Emily crouched behind the line, wiping sweat from her brow. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fatigue, from the intensity of the pressure she had placed upon herself. She thought about all the mornings she had spent alone, dry firing at makeshift targets in her father's old garage. All those late nights practicing breathing, stance, and focus had led to this moment. She smiled faintly to herself. Donovan's challenge had pushed her to the edge, exactly where she needed to be. The afternoon brought the live fire qualification test. Recruits moved with a combination of adrenaline and dread. Emily's turn came. Her heart pounded, but her breathing was controlled. She lifted her rifle, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the target. The first shot rang out, perfect. The second, a bullseye. Donovan's gaze shifted from skeptical to intrigued. Emily's confidence grew with each round, but she refused to look away from her target. This was her proving ground, and she would not falter. As the final shot echoed, a hush fell over the range. Emily had hit every target in sequence, flawless under pressure. Her peers stared, a mix of awe and disbelief etched on their faces. Donovan's expression was unreadable, but his eyes lingered on her longer than before, a silent acknowledgement forming in the depths of his gaze. Emily lowered her rifle, exhaustion mingling with exhilaration. She had survived the breaking point, and in doing so, she had begun to carve out her place. Later, in the barracks, Emily cleaned her rifle meticulously, the smell of oil and metal grounding her. She replayed every moment of the day, analyzing every shot, every stance, every breath. Failure had tested her, humiliation had challenged her, and fatigue had threatened to consume her. Yet she had endured, transforming pressure into performance. She whispered to herself, almost as a promise, "I will not be broken here. Not now, not ever." The day had tested more than her skill. It had tested her spirit. Emily Torres wasn't just a recruit struggling through drills. She was a young soldier, forging resilience in the furnace of doubt. And Sergeant Donovan, the man who had tried to intimidate her, had begun to notice something he hadn't expected, a fire that refused to be extinguished. By nightfall, Emily lay awake on her cot, muscles aching, eyes heavy, yet her mind buzzed with determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new trials, and undoubtedly, new skepticism from Donovan and the platoon. But she felt a quiet certainty. She had faced the breaking point and emerged stronger. And this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, she would take another step, closer to earning the respect of the sergeant, the platoon, and herself. The evening air was thick, with the faint scent of gunpowder and sweat, as Emily Torres finally found a quiet corner in the barracks. Her muscles were sore, her uniform damp, but her mind refused to rest. She stared at her rifle, tracing its smooth metal with fingers that had grown both calloused and precise. Every scar on her hands told a story. Long nights practicing dry fire in her father's garage. Days spent memorizing every detail of breathing and stance. Her success on the range today was not luck. It was preparation. Memories of her father, Corporal Daniel Torres, surfaced like vivid flashbacks. He had been a sniper instructor, a man of few words but immeasurable patience. Emily remembered him adjusting her posture as a child, guiding her hands over the rifle, correcting her breathing. "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast," he would murmur, his eyes narrowing as he watched her carefully line up a shot. Those words had become a mantra, echoing in every drill, every training session, every shot fired in her journey toward the Army. Her father had not only taught her how to shoot, but how to endure. He had shown her how to remain calm under pressure, how to focus on the task, not the audience. His own experience in the field, the battles he had fought, the lives he had saved, had shaped Emily's understanding of what discipline truly meant. Losing him had left a void, but it also ignited a fire. Emily's choice to join the Army was a promise to honor him, to continue his legacy in every precise, deliberate action she took. Back on the range today, she had felt the weight of his lessons pressing down, guiding her. Each shot that found its mark was a quiet homage to him. Yet, Donovan's skeptical gaze reminded her that respect would not be given. It had to be earned. She recalled his sharp commands, his criticism, and the subtle smirk that suggested he already thought her unworthy. That doubt fueled her determination. She was no longer just a recruit. She was a student of her father's discipline, a soldier in training, and a force quietly gathering strength. Emily's fellow recruits had begun to take notice. Some stared, others whispered, but she paid no mind. Their doubt was irrelevant. She focused on the fundamentals: stance, grip, trigger control, breath. Every muscle, every nerve, every calculation was aligned with her training and the memory of her father's meticulous guidance. She replayed those lessons silently, visualizing herself hitting the bullseye again and again. This mental rehearsal was her weapon, more powerful than any rifle alone. Her mind drifted to her father's final days. He had fallen ill unexpectedly, and she had spent weeks at his side, learning that strength was not just physical but emotional. Even bedridden, he insisted she continue practicing, insisting that discipline was formed in adversity, that excellence required sacrifice. "Don't let fear or doubt run your life," he had whispered, squeezing her hand. "You have what it takes, always remember that." Those words had etched themselves into her consciousness, shaping her resilience in the face of Donovan's intimidation. The night deepened, and the barracks grew quiet, save for the distant hum of machinery and the occasional shuffle of a recruit returning late from drills. Emily lay back on her cot, the rifle beside her, and closed her eyes. She could feel Donovan's judgment from today pressing on her even in the silence, but she transformed it into resolve. His doubt was not a barrier. It was a challenge, a proving ground. She imagined herself on the range tomorrow, performing flawlessly, earning every ounce of respect she had not yet received. In the quiet, Emily's thoughts wandered to the times she had practiced alone. She remembered waking before dawn, her father asleep in the other room, and running through drills in near darkness. The cold morning air biting at her skin, the rough concrete of the garage floor under her feet, the smell of gunpowder lingering after each shot, all of it had forged her focus. No one had been watching. No one had been cheering. It had been just her, the rifle, and the relentless pursuit of mastery. Those moments had been painful, exhausting, and solitary, but they had built the foundation she now relied on. The lessons were not only about skill. They were about mindset. Emily's father had taught her that fear was natural, even necessary, but it had to be controlled, not eliminated. She had learned to welcome the pressure, to treat it as a lens that sharpened her focus, rather than a weight that crushed her spirit. Today's trials under Donovan's watchful eye had been her first real test of this philosophy. The public scrutiny, the whispered doubts, the sergeant's relentless commands, they had all been pressure in its rawest form. And she had endured. Emily opened her eyes and glanced at the window. The stars above Fort Benning twinkled faintly, distant yet constant, like markers of direction. She imagined her father's voice carried on the wind, guiding her, steadying her. Tomorrow would bring another day of drills, another opportunity to test herself, to face Donovan's scrutiny head on. But tonight, she allowed herself a quiet moment of confidence. She had survived the day. She had held her ground, as she had not broken. Her resolve hardened. The doubt that had hovered over her on the first day, the sneers, the skepticism, the unspoken question of whether she belonged, was losing its grip. Emily had begun to understand that skill and resilience could outweigh prejudice and judgment. Her father's teachings had prepared her not just to handle a rifle, but to handle a world that often underestimated her. Donovan's intimidation was just another challenge, another barrier to overcome. And Emily Torres did not back down. By the time she finally drifted to sleep, the memory of her father, the lessons he had imparted, and the fire of determination within her merged into a single, unyielding force. Emily knew that tomorrow would demand more focus, more precision, more endurance, but she felt ready. She had discovered the driving force behind her ambition, the source of her resilience. It was not fear of failure. It was the desire to honor the past, to prove herself, and to rise above every expectation. And as the barracks settled into silence, Emily's breathing even and steady, she made a quiet promise to herself. Every target I face, every challenge I endure, I will face it with the strength he gave me. I will not falter. I will not break. I will rise. Tomorrow, the range would test her again. But Emily Torres was no longer just reacting to pressure. She was ready to control it, to wield it, and to prove that her father's legacy lived on in her hands, her mind, and her unwavering aim. The next morning, the sun burned brighter than it had the day before, reflecting off the steel of rifles lined meticulously along the range. Emily Torres felt the familiar ache in her shoulders and arms, remnants of yesterday's relentless drills. But she welcomed it. Pain was proof of effort, of progress. Today would be different. She had the memory of yesterday's small victories, and the voice of her father whispering, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." Sergeant Donovan strode down the line, his boots kicking up dust with every step. He paused before Emily, his face a mask of scrutiny. "Torres," he said, voice low but cutting, "you think yesterday made you good? Today, we find out if you're soldier material or just lucky." His eyes bore into her, searching for any sign of weakness. Emily held his gaze steadily. She wasn't intimidated. She was ready. The drill began with a live fire qualification. Targets were set at varying distances, some static, some moving. Recruits moved with controlled urgency, muscles tense and nerves on edge. Emily's first shot landed slightly off-center. A small murmur ran through the group. Donovan's sharp whistle sliced the air, drawing everyone's attention to her. "What happened, Torres?" he demanded. The words stung, not because of the reprimand itself, but because of the public scrutiny. Every recruit's eyes were on her. Emily exhaled, slow and controlled, letting each breath steady her focus. She adjusted her grip and stance, recalling her father's instructions down to the smallest detail: elbow angle, sight alignment, even the rhythm of her heartbeat. Her next shots were precise, finding the center of every target. The other recruits fell silent, watching in awe as she moved with a combination of calm focus and lethal precision. Donovan's eyes narrowed, his expression unreadable but keenly attentive. Then came the critical moment, a rifle jam mid-drill. Time froze. Emily could feel the tension in the air, the weight of every eye on her. Some recruits stifled gasps. Others whispered that she would falter. Donovan's gaze sharpened, his lips tightening. Emily could hear the unspoken thought behind his eyes. This is where she breaks. But Emily didn't panic. She knelt, methodically clearing the jam, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She checked her rifle, reloaded, and resumed firing. Each shot landed perfectly, the group falling silent in astonishment. The weight of expectation, intimidation, and judgment had transformed into clarity and precision. Emily had reached a turning point, the moment when skill, preparation, and resolve converged. Donovan stepped closer after the drill, inspecting her target sheet. Perfect grouping. Dead center. He didn't speak immediately. His silence was heavy, charged with an emotion he rarely displayed: respect. He had underestimated her. For the first time, he saw beyond the title of female recruit, or newcomer, and recognized the raw talent and mental fortitude she possessed. Emily felt a flicker of satisfaction, tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning of earning his approval. Later, as the recruits filtered out, Donovan found her cleaning her rifle alone. He didn't shout, didn't bark, didn't deliver another biting critique. Instead, he regarded her quietly, eyes studying her movements, the precision with which she cared for her weapon. "You're not bad, Torres," he said finally, his voice almost neutral. "Don't waste it." The words were sparse but weighty, a rare acknowledgement from the sergeant. Emily simply nodded, letting the moment speak for itself. That night, Emily lay awake in her cot, reflecting on the day. Her muscles throbbed, and exhaustion tugged at her eyelids, but her mind was alive with clarity. Today, she had faced public doubt, intimidation, and a literal breakdown of her weapon under scrutiny, and she had emerged not only intact but stronger. The turning point wasn't just technical skill. It was the realization that her mental discipline, forged over years with her father's guidance, could overcome even the sharpest external pressure. Emily's thoughts drifted to the other recruits. Some had faltered under the same stress. Others had been too cautious, paralyzed by fear of failure. She didn't feel superior, only focused. She knew that discipline and resilience were forged, not inherited. Donovan's acknowledgement, subtle as it was, marked a critical shift. He would now watch her differently, aware that she was capable of rising above expectation. That awareness alone altered the dynamics of the platoon. Even as she replayed the day's events, Emily knew the turning point had a deeper significance. It wasn't just about earning Donovan's respect. It was about realizing her own strength. She had entered the army with doubt shadowing her every move, both from others and herself. Today, she discovered that she could transform pressure into performance. The battlefield of emotion, Intimidation and expectation had been navigated successfully. That internal victory would carry her further than any drill or qualification. Emily's thoughts inevitably turned back to her father. His teachings had prepared her not just for technical proficiency, but for the psychological warfare inherent in military training. Pressure is a privilege, he had told her. It shows you're in the arena. Only those who endure it can succeed. She felt that privilege now, in the full glare of Donovan's scrutiny and the subtle respect forming in his gaze. The turning point was as much about mindset as it was about marksmanship. By the end of the night, Emily knew something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer the timid recruit, intimidated by the sergeant. She had proven to herself that preparation, patience, and mental resilience could carry her through moments designed to break her. Donovan's skepticism had been a crucible, and she had emerged forged, stronger, and sharper. As she lay back on her cot, eyes staring at the ceiling, she envisioned the coming days. More drills, more pressure, more scrutiny. But Emily felt ready. Her rifle rested beside her, a tool she now commanded with increasing confidence. Her father's memory lingered, guiding every thought and every breath. Donovan's acknowledgement, rare and understated, was a reminder that respect was a prize earned through perseverance and excellence. The turning point was more than skill. It was self-recognition. Emily realized that the power to face intimidation, to meet every challenge, lay not in proving others wrong, but in proving herself right. She had met the first great test of mental and emotional discipline, and she had passed. Tomorrow, she would face more challenges, but tonight, Emily Torres allowed herself a quiet satisfaction. She had begun her transformation from recruit to soldier, and the path ahead, though grueling, was hers to navigate. And as sleep finally claimed her, she whispered softly into the darkness, "I am ready." The sun had barely pierced the horizon, yet Fort Benning was already alive with motion. The scent of morning dew mixed with gunpowder and sweat as recruits lined up for what Donovan announced as an endurance qualification. Emily Torres tightened the straps on her rucksack, feeling the familiar weight of her gear and the unspoken burden of expectation. This was no ordinary drill. Donovan's eyes swept over the group, lingering on Emily for just a fraction longer than necessary, a silent reminder that he was watching, waiting for her to falter. The march began immediately, 10 grueling miles. Under the Georgia sun, rifles slung across shoulders, boots pounding the dirt path in rhythmic unison. Sweat poured down Emily's back, dripping into her eyes, stinging, but she welcomed it. Pain had become familiar. It was a companion she had learned to embrace. Each step was deliberate, each breath measured. She fell into a rhythm, her mind, quiet except for the mantra her father had taught her years ago. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Along the rut, other recruits began to falter. Some stumbled under the weight of their packs, cursing the heat, their legs giving way to fatigue. Others slowed their pace, fear creeping into their faces, their minds overtaken by the physical strain. Emily noticed them, but did not pity them. Each dropout, each falter, reminded her of what she had overcome to reach this point. She would not be broken here. She would endure. By the halfway mark, Emily's muscles screamed in protest, her shoulders burning, feet aching with every pounding step. Yet she pressed on, focusing on the path ahead, the ridge where the range awaited. Donovan walked alongside a few of the slower recruits, his voice harsh, slicing through the grunts and gasps. "You want to quit? Quit," he barked. "I don't care if it hurts. Good soldiers endure." His gaze flicked toward Emily briefly, as though assessing her resilience, testing the limits of her determination. Arriving at the range, nearly spent, Emily adjusted her rucksack and rifle, setting up for the long-range shooting test. Targets had been placed at extreme distances, some over 800 meters away. with crosswinds whipping unpredictably across the field. Most recruits were trembling from exhaustion, their breathing uneven, hands shaking as they attempted to aim. Donovan moved deliberately down the line, observing, scrutinizing. When he reached Emily, he smirked slightly. "I gave you the hardest targets." "You sure you're ready?" Emily didn't answer. Words were irrelevant. She had spent her life preparing for this. Every late night, practicing breathing control. Every memory of her father's meticulous lessons guiding her hands. She adjusted. Her stance, gripped the rifle firmly, and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of her heart synchronize with her breath. The first shot rang out, dead center. Donovan's eyes narrowed, his expression betraying the slightest flicker of surprise. She continued, shot after shot, each one precise despite the exhaustion pulling at every fiber of her body. The crosswind tried to push the bullets off course, but Emily's training held firm. Her body remembered what her mind sometimes struggled to believe: control, patience, discipline. Each shot landed squarely on its mark. A hush fell over the range, recruits watching in disbelief as Emily, barely breathing from the grueling march, performed with flawless precision. Donovan's voice cut the silence. "Adjust for the wind." He barked, not as criticism, but as a challenge. Emily recalibrated her aim, factoring in every detail: wind direction, distance, fatigue, heartbeat. The final shots landed perfectly. Dead center, one after another. Her fellow recruits looked at her in awe, whispers of disbelief and admiration rippling through the line. Donovan simply stood back, eyes locked on the target sheet, his face a mask of measured respect. After the drill, Emily collapsed onto the ground briefly, muscles trembling, heart racing, every joint screaming in protest. She had reached the edge of her endurance and had not fallen. Donovan approached her, his boots crunching against the gravel. He didn't offer the usual sarcasm or critique. Instead, he regarded her quietly, eyes scanning her form, the rifle, the precision of her work. "You've got grit, Torres," he said simply, almost grudgingly. "You've got the heart of a soldier. Don't waste it." Exhaustion mixed with pride. Emily realized that grit wasn't just physical endurance. It was mental fortitude, the ability to persevere when every instinct screamed to stop. Today's test had been designed to break the recruits, to expose weaknesses, to separate the mediocre from the capable. She had emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, sharper, more confident. As the recruits filed back to the barracks, Emily's thoughts drifted to the past, to her father's voice guiding her hand, to the countless hours she had spent alone refining her skills. Every lesson, every correction, every failure had prepared her for this moment. The march, the fatigue, the extreme targets, they were tests not just of skill, but of resolve. And she had passed. Back in the barracks, Emily cleaned her rifle meticulously, the familiar rhythm grounding her. Each movement was precise, methodical, a reflection of the discipline she had internalized over years of preparation. Donovan had left, but his words lingered. Grit, heart, soldier. Emily repeated them silently, letting the meaning sink deep into her mind. This was more than validation. It was a reminder of what she was capable of when determination met preparation. That night, Emily lay awake, every ache in her body a testament to the day's trial. She had confronted exhaustion, intimidation, and extreme pressure, and emerged victorious. Her muscles would heal. Her mind was sharper than ever. She realized that grit wasn't just about enduring hardship. It was about controlling it, mastering it, and using it to propel oneself forward. Emily's resolve had grown beyond the need for Donovan's approval, though she valued it. She understood now that true strength came from within, from the ability to remain focused and precise when every external factor screamed distraction, pain, or gout. A sergeant's challenge had been more than a physical test. It was an examination. of character, and Emily had passed with quiet dignity. As the barracks settled into darkness, Emily whispered softly into the night, a vow to herself: no matter the challenge, no matter the trial, I will endure. I will master this. I will rise above every expectation. Tomorrow would bring another test, another challenge, another opportunity to prove herself. But tonight, Emily Torres allowed herself a quiet moment of triumph. She had faced the test of grit, and she had not only survived, but conquered it. The morning sun glinted off the metal of rifles and helmets, turning the Fort Benning range into a field of glistening determination. Emily Torres stood among the recruits, still feeling the burn in her muscles from yesterday's grueling endurance test. Her uniform was damp with sweat, her boots scuffed, but there was a quiet fire in her eyes that drew attention. She had survived exhaustion, intimidation, and pressure. Today, she would face her most personal challenge yet, a direct test from Sergeant Donovan himself. Donovan's presence was magnetic and intimidating, his sharp gaze sweeping over the recruits. He stopped in front of Emily, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Torres," he said, voice low, deliberate. "I've been watching you. You've got grit, precision, endurance. But now I want to see if you can handle the real challenge, advanced marksmanship under direct scrutiny. Think you're ready?" Emily met his eyes steadily. Words were unnecessary. She had demonstrated her determination in action. Donovan's lips pressed into a thin line, and without another word, he directed her to the far end of the range. The targets were set at extreme distances, some moving, others partially obscured. Each shot would require careful calculation: wind, distance, breathing, heartbeat, every factor meticulously considered. This was a test not just of skill, but of intellect and composure. The other recruits watched as Donovan assigned him and Emily side by side for the drill. The sergeant fired first, hitting a distant target dead center. He turned slightly, watching Emily with an inscrutable expression. It was her turn. She steadied her grip, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck true. Donovan raised an eyebrow. He fired again, and Emily mirrored him flawlessly, compensating for the crosswind, adjusting for distance, her focus absolute. Each shot became a silent dialogue between student and teacher, skill and scrutiny, determination and expectation. Emily felt a strange sense of clarity. The fatigue of previous drills, the heat, and the pressure all dissolved into a singular focus: the target. The rifle was an extension of her will, each shot a testament to the years of preparation and discipline instilled by her father. Donovan's sharp commands were no longer intimidating. They were part of the rhythm, a challenge she met with precision and calm. By the time the final target appeared, Emily was exhausted but resolute. She calculated the trajectory, accounting for the wind and her own heartbeat. The shot rang out, dead center. Donovan's stoicism faltered for the first time, a flicker of astonishment crossing his face. Around them, the recruits whispered, astonished at Emily's flawless performance under direct comparison to their demanding sergeant. For Emily, however, the victory was quiet, internal. She had not only met Donovan's expectations, she had exceeded them. After the drill, Donovan approached her, boots crunching on gravel. "I didn't think you had it in you, Torres," he admitted, his voice low, almost reluctant. "You've got the precision, the control, and the calm under pressure. Most soldiers crumble under this test, but not you." Emily simply nodded, letting the words settle. She had earned respect not through words or defiance, but through action, skill, and relentless determination. The challenge extended beyond marksmanship. Donovan now led a tactical simulation, placing Emily and a small team in a mock combat scenario. Targets appeared unpredictably, requiring split-second decisions, quick reflexes, and unyielding focus. Emily moved with calculated precision, neutralizing threats with deadly efficiency. Donovan's eyes followed her every move, the sharpest critique replaced with a grudging admiration. Her performance was seamless, blending mental acuity with physical skill, a testament to her training and determination. By the end of the day, Emily had faced not only extreme technical challenges, but the judgment of her sergeant and peers. Every obstacle, every unexpected scenario, every moment of scrutiny had been a test of her courage and ability. She realized that true mastery wasn't just about hitting a target. It was about maintaining composure under relentless pressure, thinking clearly when every instinct screamed panic, and performing consistently when the world expected failure. Returning to the barracks, Emily cleaned her rifle with meticulous care, the routine grounding her. Each movement was precise, reflecting the discipline she had cultivated over years of preparation. Donovan's acknowledgement lingered in her mind. It wasn't praise in the traditional sense, but it was more valuable, recognition of her skill, focus, and resilience. She had transformed from the recruit who had been doubted and underestimated into a soldier who could meet the toughest challenge without flinching. That night, Emily reflected on the journey so far. She had faced intimidation, endured exhaustion, conquered pressure, and now earned the respect of one of the most exacting instructors at Fort Benning. Each step forward had been hard fought, each moment a blend of physical and mental endurance. She understood now that the challenges ahead would only grow, and the true test of her mettle would come not from drills or simulations, but from her ability to remain steadfast, disciplined, and focused under every circumstance. Emily lay on her cot, eyes tracing the ceiling, replaying every moment of the day. She recalled the moments when fatigue tempted her to falter, when fear whispered that she might fail, when Donovan's gaze seemed to anticipate her breaking point. But she had endured. Each victory, no matter how small, strengthened her resolve and sharpened her focus. She had begun to transform pressure into power, doubt into determination. Her thoughts drifted to the recruits around her, some discouraged, some inspired, all witnesses to her performance. Emily realized that her journey was no longer solitary. By mastering her skills and facing challenges with unwavering focus, she had begun to set an example. Leadership wasn't only about rank or authority. It was about action, discipline, and resilience. She could guide others not through words, but through demonstration of the strength she had honed. The night air settled in, heavy and warm, yet Emily felt lighter than ever. Her body ached, her mind was fatigued, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. The challenge had been more than technical skill or endurance. It had been a revelation. She had discovered the depths of her capability, the power of preparation, and the strength that came from embracing pressure rather than fearing it. Emily whispered into the darkness, almost a promise to herself. Every challenge I face, I will meet it head on. Every test, every trial, every expectation, I will rise to it. I will not falter. I will not break. Tomorrow would bring new trials, more obstacles, perhaps even greater scrutiny. But Emily Torres had crossed a threshold. She had transformed skepticism into respect, doubt into determination, and pressure into performance. The challenge was not over, but she now understood that she possessed the tools, the mindset, and the heart to face whatever came next. And as sleep claimed her, the quiet hum of the barracks around her, Emily felt a profound certainty. She was no longer just a recruit. She was a soldier in every sense, ready for the next battle, ready for the next challenge, and ready to carve her legacy. Weeks of grueling training had honed Emily Torres into a precise, disciplined soldier, but nothing could fully prepare her for the first real deployment. The squad was deployed to a simulated urban environment, a sprawling mock city built for tactical exercises. Buildings, alleyways, and rooftop vantage points created a labyrinth where danger could appear from any angle. The mission, infiltrate, neutralize hostile forces, and protect civilians. Donovan had made it clear. Mistakes here were costly, not just for points, but for lives, even if simulated. Emily adjusted her gear and rifle, feeling the familiar weight on her shoulders, both literal and symbolic. Each strap tightened was a reminder of every lesson, every drill, every challenge she had faced and overcome at Fort Benning. Her mind replayed her father's advice. Pressure is a privilege. It separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. She inhaled deeply, centering herself before stepping into the simulated battlefield. The team moved through narrow alleys first, scanning windows and doorways, every shadow a potential threat. Emily's eyes were sharp, trained to detect movement that others might miss. A sudden noise to her left, a simulated enemy combatant ducking behind a barricade. Her reflexes kicked in instinctively. She raised her rifle, steadied her breathing, and neutralized the threat with a single precise shot. The squad's morale lifted. They began to rely on her focus and calm presence in the chaos. Suddenly, an explosion rocked a nearby building, smoke and dust filling the narrow street. Civilians, mannequins representing townspeople, were scattered, some near the danger zone. Emily didn't hesitate. She signaled to teammates, coordinating their movements to shield the civilians while maintaining offensive positions. Every step required calculation, movement, cover, timing, and situational awareness. She felt her pulse steady, the chaos around her sharpening her focus rather than disrupting it. As they advanced deeper into the mock city, a group of hostile targets appeared on a rooftop. Donovan's earlier lessons on marksmanship, wind, and distance came alive. Emily calculated trajectory, factoring in the height difference, wind currents, and movement of the targets. Her shots rang true one by one, taking down threats while keeping civilians safe. Her teammates looked at her in awe, following her lead and relying on her instincts. For the first time, Emily realized that training had evolved into mastery, not just of skill, but of judgment under pressure. Then came the critical test, a coordinated ambush in a narrow alleyway. Hostile targets surrounded the squad from multiple angles, creating a life-or-death scenario. Shouts and simulated gunfire erupted in all directions. Some recruits panicked, faltering under the pressure. Emily's mind remained clear. She moved with purpose, providing cover, neutralizing targets efficiently, and guiding teammates to safer positions. Each movement was deliberate, each shot precise. She was no longer a trainee. She was the pivot around which the team's success depended. A simulated casualty appeared, a teammate injured during the ambush. Emily sprang into action, assessing the situation, coordinating support, and ensuring the injured recruit was secured while maintaining tactical advantage. Her ability to multitask under extreme pressure impressed even Donovan, who observed from a distance, silent but intensely focused. Emily realized that leadership wasn't about rank. It was about composure, strategy, and decisive action under duress. After neutralizing the final wave of hostile targets and securing all civilians, the squad regrouped. Breathing heavy, hearts racing, they had completed the mission flawlessly. Donovan approached Emily first, his expression unreadable for a moment, then softened with rare acknowledgement. "Torres," he said, voice low but commanding, "you led with precision, composure, and intelligence. You didn't just survive the mission, you excelled." Emily exhaled, letting the tension drain from her body. The real battle, even simulated, had tested every skill, every lesson, every ounce of grit she had developed over months. She realized the magnitude of what she had accomplished. She had transformed from a recruit under scrutiny into a soldier capable of leading, performing, and making critical decisions under extreme pressure. Back at the barracks that evening, Emily cleaned her rifle meticulously, reflecting on the day's trials. She remembered the initial intimidation, the grueling endurance tests, the marksmanship challenges, and every moment of doubt. All of it had led to this: mastery in action, skill under pressure, and leadership in chaos. She allowed herself a quiet moment of pride, knowing she had proven her readiness not only to Donovan, but to herself. Emily lay on her cot, staring at the ceiling, replaying the mission in her mind. Each successful maneuver, each precise shot, each coordinated decision reinforced her belief. She had become more than she had ever imagined. The real battle, even simulated, had revealed her potential, cementing her growth and confirming that every challenge she faced had been preparation for this moment. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was a promise. I am ready for anything. I will face every challenge with focus, precision, and determination. I am a soldier, and this is only the beginning. The dawn was sharp and electric over Fort Benning. Emily Torres stood on the edge of the training field, her rifle slung over her shoulder, eyes scanning the simulated urban battlefield laid before the recruits. Today was the final evaluation, the culmination of weeks of relentless training, endurance tests, mental fortitude drills, and marksmanship challenges. Donovan had made it clear. This was the moment where every recruit would prove themselves. Emily's heartbeat thrummed steadily, a rhythm of readiness rather than fear. She glanced at her fellow recruits, noticing the tension etched on their faces. Some were nervous, others eager, but all shared one understanding. Failure here meant humiliation. Yet Emily felt calm. She had faced intimidation, exhaustion, doubt, and near breakdown. She had endured and conquered every trial, and now this final test was not a threat, it was an opportunity. Donovan's voice cut through the morning air, crisp and commanding. This scenario simulates a hostile urban engagement. You must neutralize threats, navigate obstacles, and protect civilians, all while demonstrating tactical precision. Miss a step, and you fail. His gaze lingered on Emily for a fraction longer than necessary. There was no doubt in his expression this time, only assessment, like a predator evaluating prey. But Emily did not waver. She had been tested in fire, under scrutiny, and in grueling endurance drills. Today, she would excel. The simulation began with sudden chaos. Smoke filled portions of the range, and mechanized targets moved unpredictably among barricades, simulating enemy combatants. Civilians, represented by training mannequins, were scattered strategically. Recruits were immediately tasked with making split-second decisions, identifying threats while protecting innocents. Emily's body moved almost instinctively. Every drill, every lesson, every late-night practice session guiding her actions. She ducked behind cover, adjusting her rifle, scanning for movement. A target appeared suddenly in a doorway, gun raised. Emily exhaled, aligned her sights, and fired, the shot hitting perfectly. Another threat emerged, this time behind a vehicle. Emily's mind calculated trajectory, wind, and timing. Another clean hit. Each successful engagement reinforced her confidence. She was not just surviving. She was dominating the scenario with a combination of precision, calm, and strategy. The other recruits struggled. Panic crept into their movements, hesitation slowing them down, mistakes costing them precious seconds. Emily's focus remained unbroken. She navigated obstacles, engaged targets, and made strategic decisions with the steady composure that Donovan had long challenged her to master. Every moment was a reflection of years of preparation, of her father's lessons, and of the relentless discipline she had cultivated under the sergeant's scrutiny. Then came the critical moment, a sudden ambush on her flank. Two targets moved into position, weapons raised, and civilians lay in the line of fire. Recruits nearby froze, their inexperience and fear taking over. Emily acted without hesitation. She dropped low, adjusted her angle, and neutralized the threats with calculated precision. Simultaneously, she signaled nearby recruits, guiding them to safety. Her actions were swift, decisive, and effective. The ambush was over almost as quickly as it began, and Donovan's sharp whistle sounded the end of the phase. The field fell silent. Recruits glanced at Emily in astonishment. Some shook their heads, others offered quiet nods of respect. Donovan's expression, typically unreadable, finally softened with a subtle nod of approval. He walked toward her, boots crunching against gravel, and stopped just short. "Torres," he said, voice carrying a rare weight of acknowledgement. "You've not just completed the exercise, you've mastered it. Precision, composure, leadership. You've shown what it means to be a soldier. Well done." Emily's chest swelled with quiet pride. She did not smile broadly, did not boast. She allowed the acknowledgement to settle quietly, a validation of all her effort, all her endurance, and all her perseverance. This was not just a personal victory. It was a testament to the legacy her father had left her, the lessons she had internalized, and the strength she had cultivated through every trial, every test, every moment of doubt overcome. After the evaluation, the recruits filed back to the barracks. Emily moved with a calm confidence, rifle slung and boots steady. Fellow recruits offered congratulatory remarks, some tentative, others admiring. Emily acknowledged them with quiet nods, her focus never wavering from the lesson of the day. Mastery was not about recognition. It was about action, discipline, and inner resolve. In the quiet of the barracks that evening, Emily cleaned her rifle with meticulous care, the familiar ritual grounding her after the intense day. Donovan had left for the evening, but his words echoed in her mind, a rare acknowledgement of her skill and character. She reflected on the journey, the intimidation, the grueling drills, the tests of endurance and precision, the moments of doubt and near failure. Each had led her to this day. Each had forged her into a soldier, capable of facing not just training, but real challenges. As she lay on her cot later, staring at the ceiling, Emily allowed herself a quiet smile. She thought of her father, of his voice guiding her hand, of the lessons that had shaped her from a young girl into a soldier capable of rising above expectation. Every challenge had been an opportunity, every test a chance to refine skill and character. Donovan's acknowledgement, the respect of her peers, and her own internal validation were all signs of a journey completed with integrity, determination, and excellence. Emily whispered softly, almost as if to her father, "I did it. I made it. I won." But in truth, the triumph was more than the completion of training. It was the culmination of perseverance, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of mastery. She had faced every challenge, endured every pressure, and emerged not just intact, but stronger, sharper, and ready for whatever came next. The journey had transformed her. Emily Torres was no longer merely a recruit, learning to survive under scrutiny and pressure. She had become a soldier, tested in body, mind, and spirit. She had learned that intimidation could be faced, doubt could be overcome, and challenges could be mastered through focus, preparation, and unwavering determination. And as the barracks settled into quiet night, Emily closed her eyes, exhausted but exhilarated. She knew the road ahead would bring new challenges, new battles, and perhaps even greater pressures. But she also knew this. She had discovered her own strength, resilience, and skill. The trials of Fort Benning had been more than training. They had been a crucible, and Emily Torres had emerged tempered, disciplined, and triumphant. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was simple, yet profound. I am ready. For any challenge. For any trial. I am a soldier,